The music was louder when I stepped back inside. Or maybe everything just felt louder, like the floorboards were groaning under some secret the house was keeping. I remember wiping my hands on my jeans. I'd just come in from the driveway where I'd taken a call from my brother. It was routine. Something about refinancing Mom's cabin and whether I'd co-sign. I told him I'd think about it. I didn't tell him I was at a party. I didn't tell him that for the last 10 minutes I'd been trying not to throw up. Not because of the call, but because of what I suspected was happening while I was outside. I told myself I was paranoid. Then I opened the wrong door. It was supposed to be the hallway to the bathroom. That's what I told myself. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't checking up on her. I just misremembered the layout. That's what I wanted to believe. The door opened easily, quietly, too quietly. And there she was, not in a bedroom, not in a closet, in a laundry room, lights off. Only the hallway glow outlining her silhouette and his. I didn't see anything explicit, but I didn't have to. Her body was pressed into his. His hand was on her lower back. Her fingers curled around his collar like she'd done it 100 times, like muscle memory. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I blinked, and then they noticed me. She gasped. He stepped back. The silence between the three of us was longer than it should have been. She didn't say my name. She didn't rush over. She just stared. Her lips parted like she was about to invent a reason for being there. But nothing came. I closed the door gently. I didn't slam it. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I walked through the kitchen. Someone handed me a plastic cup of sangria and said, "You okay, man?" I nodded. Then I walked out the front door, sat in my car, and turned off my phone. I don't remember the drive home. I remember the glow of red tail lights. I remember gripping the steering. Well, so tight my knuckles cracked. I remember seeing her name light up my phone twice before it died. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat in the driveway of our house for hours, watching shadows move behind the curtains, wondering which version of her I'd be coming home to, and whether she'd even bother lying. She came home just after 1 a.m. I heard her heels click against the tiles in the entryway. That deliberate pace she always had when she was preparing for something, like walking into a meeting or through an airport or into a fight she planned to win. I was on the couch, lights off, blanket over my lap like I'd fallen asleep watching something, though I hadn't turned the TV on at all. I'd just been sitting in the dark, replaying the image of her in that laundry room like a video clip stuck on loop. She didn't see me at first. I watched her silhouette past the hallway mirror, her hand brushing her hair like she was checking how she looked, not panicked, not even guilty, just composed. And then she saw me. She froze, one heel still slightly lifted, as if her next step would either be toward me or away, depending on what I said. But I didn't speak. I just watched her, waiting to see which version of her I was going to get. She said my name like a question, as if unsure I was real. Then she added something about trying to find me at the party, how I'd just disappeared, and she figured I left early. Her voice was steady, too steady, practiced like she'd had to ride home to rehearse. I asked her calmly who the man was. She blinked. What man? I didn't respond. I just tilted my head, and for a moment something flickered across her face. Recognition, maybe, or fear. It was like her brain clicked into a different gear, as if she'd suddenly remembered there had been a door and someone had opened it. She sat down slowly on the edge of the recliner across from me. Not beside me, not even close. She placed her purse on the floor like it was a fragile item between us and sighed through her nose. I didn't do anything. She said that sentence. It was so small, so carefully chosen, that it made me feel insane. Not, it's not what you think. Not, I'm sorry, not even let me explain. Just 4 words that offered no truth. No lie, only fog. She didn't deny she was in that room. She didn't ask what I saw. She just leaned on the one technicality that might let her sleep better. I didn't do anything. I asked her how long she'd known him. She paused. Too long, then said, "He's just someone Jordan works with." We were talking about the lighting in the hallway, and the lights were off. I interrupted. Another silence. Another lie. Collapsing. That's when she stood up fast, like she'd suddenly remembered she had something on the stove. Except there was nothing. She just started pacing, rubbing her temples, saying my name again and again. Like that would somehow reset the conversation. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't accuse her of anything she hadn't already admitted with her body language. I just asked the one question I was afraid to know the answer to. Do you love him? She stopped moving. She didn't look at me. She didn't say no. Instead, she whispered something so quietly, I wasn't even sure I heard right. I don't know how to answer that. And that was it. She went upstairs slowly, leaving me in the living room, surrounded by shadows and unanswered questions. I heard the bedroom door shut. I waited for it to lock, but it didn't. I stayed on the couch the rest of the night, blanket over me, eyes wide open, trying to figure out whether this was the beginning of something breaking or the moment I realized it already had. The next morning, the house was too quiet. Not peacefully quiet, but that kind of silence that swells after an argument you didn't have. I heard her moving around upstairs, heard the shower running longer than usual, but she didn't come down until after I'd already finished my coffee. I sat at the kitchen table, pretending to scroll through news on my phone, but I couldn't stop watching the stairwell. When she finally came down, she looked polished. Too polished for a Sunday, hair blown out, makeup light, but deliberate. She was wearing the blouse she usually saved for work presentations. Not brunch, not a hangover day, not the morning after whatever last night was. She opened the fridge, pretending not to notice I was watching her. "You want something?" I was thinking of making eggs. That's when I realized how surreal everything had become. She was offering me eggs like nothing had happened. Like our marriage hadn't shifted a degree to the left overnight. Like she hadn't whispered, "I don't know how to answer that." When I asked if she loved someone else, I told her I wasn't hungry. I said it too flatly. She noticed. I could see it in how her shoulders tensed before she turned back to the fridge. Then she started talking fast, disjointed, like she'd planned a speech in front of the mirror, but had forgotten the middle. "I think maybe we should take a little space. Just a few days. Not like a separation, just a reset. I'll go stay with Illa. Maybe you can think and I can reset what?" I asked. She blinked. "I mean, what are we resetting? If nothing happened, why do we need a reset?" That shut her down. Her mouth opened, then closed. She pressed her lips together and exhaled through her nose. "I think we both know that something's been off for a while," she said, looking at the countertop instead of me. "You've been distant. You've been, I don't know, not present." It landed like a punch. I wasn't braced for. Because it was true. I had been distant. Not because I didn't care, but because for months I'd been feeling like a guest in my own marriage. Like I was always 5 steps behind a conversation I didn't know had started. But hearing her use it now as her reason her out was like being blamed for not watering a plant after she'd already pulled it from the soil. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. I just nodded and said, "Okay." She packed a bag in 20 minutes. Didn't cry, didn't kiss me, just grabbed her keys and said she'd text me. The door closed behind her, and I stood in the living room, staring at the dent in the couch cushion where she used to sit every night. Knees curled up, remote in one hand and tea in the other. And that's when I started thinking about all the moments I hadn't understood. The late-night showers after supposed girls' nights. The sudden guilt when I surprised her at work with coffee and she insisted on meeting me in the parking lot. The way she started locking her phone screen even when she was just walking to the bathroom. It wasn't hindsight anymore. It was a pattern and I started following it. I didn't go through her phone. I couldn't. I still believed there was some line I hadn't crossed yet. But I did something else. I went to her desktop computer upstairs, the one we used less and less since she got her tablet, and checked the browser history. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just looking, and that's when I saw it. An open email tab still signed in her personal account. The subject line of the most recent message simply read, "Last night." The preview said, "I can still smell you on my hands." I didn't click it. I closed the window. I walked to the bathroom and threw up. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, something inside me finally cracked because it wasn't about the cheating anymore. It was about how long she'd stopped being mine and how long I'd been pretending not to see it. I couldn't stop rereading that email subject line. Even though I hadn't clicked on it last night, I could still smell you on my hands. It played in my head on repeat, like a dark mantra, each repetition pulling me further from the man I thought I was, and closer to someone I didn't recognize, someone hollow. My hands were shaking when I stepped away from the desk. I didn't even log her out. I just walked out of the room like I'd stepped on a landmine and was hoping if I didn't move too fast, I wouldn't fall apart. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat either. I just sat in our bed surrounded by pillows that still smelled like her shampoo, trying to piece together what I'd missed. How many lies did she wrap in smiles? How many nights had I kissed her cheek after she came home late, without ever wondering what or who she had been doing? The next morning, I got a text, not from her, from Isla. "Hey, is everything okay?" Celine said she was staying with me, but never showed. I stared at the screen. My stomach dropped. I read it again just to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting. But no, it was clear. Celine had lied again. She told me she was going to Ila's. Ila, her best friend since college. The same Ila who would have covered for her in the past without even blinking. But now she was asking me where Celine was. I didn't reply. I just got up, walked back to the computer, and this time I opened the email. It was short, less than a paragraph. "I can still smell you on my hands. That dress was dangerous. I'm still hard thinking about the way you lean back on the washer. I know we said no more after this, but you were right. You're different when you're with me. I don't care what he suspects. I want you again." There was no name, no sign-off, but I didn't need one. I could still see him. The man in the hallway, navy sweater, the one she said she barely knew. I felt sick again, but this time I didn't run to the bathroom. I just sat down on the floor, back against the wall, staring at the words until the screen dimmed and went black. Even then, I kept staring like they'd burn their way into the wall. The betrayal wasn't just the physical act, it was the ease of it. The comfort in her silence, the way she had let me hug her that morning after Jordan's party and ask if she was tired. And she'd said, "Yeah," but it was fun like nothing happened. She hadn't flinched, she hadn't hesitated. That was the part that destroyed me. Later that afternoon, I heard a car door shut outside. I looked through the window, and there she was. Celine, coming up the walkway like she'd just gone out to grab groceries. Hair pulled back, hoodie on, phone in one hand. Normal. Too normal. I didn't know if she was coming to explain or to pretend again. And in that moment, I wasn't sure which would hurt more. She opened the door and froze when she saw me standing in the hallway. She didn't smile. She didn't look surprised. She just sighed. "I guess you saw it," she said. I didn't reply. She dropped her keys in the bowl near the door like this was any other Thursday. "It didn't mean anything," she added, still not meeting my eyes. I almost laughed. That's how ridiculous it was. A sentence like that after 11 years of marriage, reduced to a shrug, and it didn't mean anything. I asked her how long it had been going on. She said, "A couple months." I asked how many times. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and grabbed a bottle of water as if her thirst mattered, as if I hadn't spent the last 24 hours unraveling everything I thought was real. "You don't have to make this into some huge thing," she said from behind the counter. I was feeling disconnected. "You've been checked out for months, Marshall. We barely talk. We haven't been intimate in, I don't even know. You stopped showing up." I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that I had been there, even when I felt invisible. I had shown up to her work dinners, to her mother's birthday party when I was sick, to every moment she needed me. I had to stop showing up in the exact way she wanted. And for that, I was now a memory she was rewriting to suit her guilt. She drank her water, wiped her mouth, and finally looked at me. "I'm not saying I was right," she said, "but I wasn't happy, and I don't think you were either." That was the moment I realized she'd already made peace with it. The betrayal, the lies, the end. She had processed it all long before I even knew I had something to mourn. "I didn't leave the party early," she finally admitted. "I stayed with him after you left. We went back to his place. I thought you knew." I stared at her, unable to breathe. "I thought you left me," she added quietly. Those words hit harder than any confession, because in her mind, I had left first. Not physically, but emotionally. And that to her justified everything. She wasn't sorry. She was rewriting the story, and I realized then she wasn't just cheating on me. She was already gone. It had been 2 days since Celine's so-called confession. She didn't come home that night. And I didn't ask where she went. I couldn't. I didn't want to picture her somewhere else, wearing one of the sweaters I bought her, laughing at jokes that weren't mine, letting another man believe she was free. The silence in the house had grown so loud, it felt like a presence, the kind that watches you from a corner of the room and reminds you exactly what you've lost, even when you're trying to forget. I was halfway through throwing out a drawer of receipts and useless batteries when I got a phone call from an unknown number. I usually let those go to voicemail, but I answered this one. The voice on the other end was male, calm, measured. He said my name like he knew me. "Marshall, I'm sorry to call you like this, but we need to talk, and I don't think your wife wants you to hear what I have to say." My throat went dry. "Who is this?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. "My name's Thomas. He paused. "I'm her coworker." "Well, I was until last week." That pause, it told me everything I needed to know before he even got into the details. "I don't want to cause problems," he continued. "But I also don't think it's fair that you're being lied to about how far things really went." I sat down at the edge of the bed, heart racing. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "It wasn't just that guy from the party, Marshall. She was seeing someone else too, at work before him. I only found out because she used my desk one day and forgot to log out her email. I didn't go looking, I swear. But what I saw, man, my ears were ringing. She sent photos, he said carefully, like he was trying to protect me from the word without denying its existence. To someone in a different department. It looked like it had been going on for a while, a few months, maybe more. They were emailing from a private account, but it linked to the internal network. That's how HR found out. HR? Yeah. Someone else flagged it. That's why she quit last week. She told people she was burned out, but she was about to be put on probation. They gave her the option to resign. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She hadn't just lied to me. She'd lied to everyone. Her exit from the company was a cover, a carefully staged act to keep the truth sealed away. And she never said a word. Not when she left, not when she told me she needed space. She'd been hiding layers of betrayal so deep that even her fake explanations had fake explanations. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, barely above a whisper. Thomas paused again. "Because you seemed like a good guy the one time I met you. And you deserve better than half a story. Also, I think she's planning to sell the house." My head jerked up. "What?" "She's been emailing someone about cash buyers off-market sale. Said she wanted to be out by the end of next month." I felt like the floor had dropped out beneath me. This wasn't just an affair. This was an exit strategy. I had been mourning a marriage while she was negotiating how to unload our home like it was a used car. No discussion, no confrontation, no warning. She was going to take what she wanted, disappear, and leave me in the ashes. Blindsided, dazed, and without even the courtesy of goodbye. I thanked him. I don't even remember what I said. My mouth was working, but my mind had left the room. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, staring at the front door. I half expected her to walk through it, smiling like nothing had happened, asking if I wanted to grab Thai food or watch something stupid on Netflix. She was still capable of pretending. That was her gift, her survival tactic, and I was tired of being the one fooled by it. I opened my laptop. I went through every shared document, every banking login, every folder that might give me a clue about what else she was hiding. And that's when I found it. A scanned document labeled Purchase Agreement Draft. It was dated 2 weeks ago. She'd already met with a buyer. Not only that, she'd listed herself as the sole owner. My name wasn't even on the paperwork. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't trying to sell the house. She was trying to erase me from it entirely. It's a strange thing realizing your name's been erased. I sat there staring at the draft sale agreement with my mouth open, the glow of the laptop screen reflecting off my glasses like it was trying to blind me from seeing the truth. But I saw it in bold black letters. Sole owner, Selena M. Wan. My name was nowhere, not even a mention as a co-signer. It was like I had never existed in this house. The house I painted with my own hands. The house where we argued over cabinet colors. The house where I learned to cook on YouTube just so we could stop living on takeout. It was our home, and she decided it was hers. The betrayal wasn't sharp anymore. It wasn't a blade. It was something slower now, like cement hardening around my ribs, making it difficult to breathe. She planned every move. The fake work drama. The "I just need a reset" speech. Even the night she let me see her in that laundry room. I started wondering if that had been intentional too. If I'd been allowed to catch her. If that was the scene she said, so she could paint me as the unstable one when it all fell apart. I didn't know where she was. I didn't care anymore. I just needed to know how far she'd taken it. So I did something I never thought I would. I went into the storage room. It was really more like a second attic, a weird little door behind the linen closet we never used. When we moved in, it was crammed with junk from the previous owner. Yellowing newspapers, broken picture frames, a taxidermy meow that nearly gave me a heart attack. We sealed it off years ago. Agreed it was too much hassle. But a few weeks back, I noticed the door had been unlocked, just barely a half-inch open. I told myself it was nothing. But now I wasn't sure. I pulled the door open. The air smelled stale like dust and something faintly chemical. I flicked the light switch. A single exposed bulb buzzed overhead, and that's when I saw them. 3 plastic bins pushed into the far corner, each with a piece of masking tape labeled in Selin's handwriting. They read, "Old photos, donor receipts, backup docs." It was the third one that caught me. I dragged it out into the hallway and opened it. Inside were file folders, some of them marked with dates, others with codes I didn't understand. But then I saw it. A manila envelope labeled in small, precise handwriting. MW Plan B, do not use unless forced. MW, my initials. My stomach turned. My hands were trembling when I opened it. Inside were photocopies of documents, rental applications under her name only, email printouts with subject lines like temporary relocation options, a draft message to a law firm, unsent requesting a consultation regarding emergency separation proceedings and asset division in cases of sudden emotional distress. There was even a typed letter, not in her handwriting, not signed, but written as if from me, stating I'd voluntarily vacated the premises and had no further legal claim to shared property. I had never written that letter, but it was dated 3 months ago. She had planned for my exit before I even knew we had a problem. She was preparing to erase me, not just from her life, but from paper, from record, from the evidence of having ever been there. And worst of all, she had done it coldly, like she'd done this before. That thought sat with me in a way I didn't expect, had she? I hadn't known much about Celine before we met. She transferred jobs from another city. She didn't talk much about past relationships, said they were messy and she preferred to look forward, not back. I respected that. I trusted it. But now I was questioning everything. Every story she told me. Every bad ex she once rolled her eyes about. Every crazy roommate that overreacted. What if I hadn't been her first clean exit? What if I was just the next name on her list? I sat in that hallway, surrounded by boxes, my legs numb, my hands still buried in documents that felt like they'd been designed by a stranger. And then, just when I thought I'd reached the bottom, I heard a sound. A knock, not on the front door, on the garage door. It was soft, thought that. One knock, then silence out my breath. It came again. One knock, long pause. One more. I stood up slowly, heart pounding, and walked down the stairs toward the door that led to the garage. I opened it just a crack, and what I saw there made me stumble back in shock. It wasn't Celine. It was a teenage girl soaking wet from the rain, holding a duffel bag and whispering the last name I hadn't heard since Celine's resume. "Are you Marshall Wayne? I think I'm your daughter." She stood there drenched from head to toe, her cheeks red from the wind, her breath shallow and anxious. The duffel bag was frayed at the seams, and her fingers gripped the strap like it was her last anchor in the world. She didn't look more than 15, maybe 16. But with that hollow look in her eyes, you only get when you've learned too much too soon. I think I'm your daughter," she said again, voice trembling. "I'm sorry if this is wrong." I couldn't speak. I just stood there in the dim light of the open garage, my heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with recognition. because the more I looked at her, the more I saw the tiniest, faintest echoes. The curve of her nose, the nervous tilt of her eyebrows, the same fidgety way I used to clasp my hands when I was a kid. I stepped back, wordlessly gesturing for her to come inside. She did cautiously. Her shoes left watery prints across the floor, but she didn't seem to notice. She just looked around the house like it was a place she'd only ever imagined. Once she was seated on the edge of the couch and wrapped in a towel, I finally found my voice. "What's your name?" I asked. "Eliza," she said. I've only ever been Eliza." "And how? How do you know me?" She looked away for a second, then reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of papers, old emails, screenshots, and what looked like a birth certificate. I took them in silence. The certificate stopped me cold. Father, Marshall W. Wan. Mother, Celine, Emer Mir, Celine's maiden name. My hand shook as I flipped through the rest. Emails between Celine and someone listed only as Ja. It looked like correspondence from over a decade ago. Discussions about custody, finances, arrangements, travel restrictions. None of it made sense at first, until I reached one specific sentence from Celine's reply. "You said you didn't want him involved. You made your choice. If that changes, I'll do what's best for her, but don't expect me to drag him back into a life he didn't want." It hit me like a train. Celine had a child before she met me, and she told the father, someone I'd never heard of, that I didn't want anything to do with the baby. She had used my name, late, not to just anyone, but to her own child, to this girl, Eliza. I looked up at her, stunned. "Eliza, where have you been living?" She hesitated, mostly with a friend of hers, but I ran away. She was leaving. I found this box in her closet with letters and files. "She never told me about you, but she said your name once years ago when she thought I was asleep. I remembered it. When I found all that stuff, I looked you up. I took the bus here. I didn't know what else to do." My throat tightened. "Did she hurt you?" "No," she said quickly, "but she didn't want me anymore. I think she was trying to send me to stay with someone else permanently, somewhere out of state. She said she needed a new start." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Selena had gone so far beyond betrayal. It was like she'd burned the map entirely. She had erased an entire life she'd brought into the world. Not just from me, but from Eliza. And now, when it no longer served her, she was ready to discard her like she had everything else. That night, I let Eliza stay in the guest room. I made her a sandwich. We didn't talk much after that, but when I passed by her door later, I saw the light was still on and she was crying. Not loudly, just enough for the weight of it to bleed through the silence. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. Not the kind of fury I felt with Celine. Something steadier. Something that felt a lot like purpose. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, I knew exactly what I needed to do. That night, I barely slept. I sat at the kitchen table long after the lights were out. Long after Eliza had curled up in the guest bed with one of my old flannel shirts as a blanket. I just sat there listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant ticking of the hallway clock, wondering how many truths I'd accepted without ever questioning. For 11 years, I'd built a life with a woman who had planned her exit long before I knew there was even a crack in the foundation. But somehow, in the middle of all that loss, someone else had found me, and this time, I wasn't going to look away. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not to start a war with Celine, not to get even, just to protect what was mine. I had the documents, the paper trail, and now I had purpose. It turned out that the house title had been altered behind my back, but not finalized. She needed my signature to sell, which explained the sudden charm, the recent apologies, the bizarre push to reset. That door was now closed permanently. I filed a claim to freeze the sale, had the paperwork corrected, and added security to my accounts. I also gave Eliza's name to my lawyer, not to force anything, but to ensure that if she wanted protection, guidance, or even just a place to stay, she'd have it officially. 2 days later, Celine showed up. She didn't knock. She just walked in like she still had keys to everything, like she still owned the silence between us. But the moment she saw Eliza sitting at the table, eating cereal and smiling faintly in my direction, something changed in her face. She didn't say hello. She didn't say anything at all. She just stood there in the doorway, blinking as if she had just seen a ghost from alive. She tried to bury. "I told you to stay with Heather," she said to Eliza. "I didn't want to," Eliza replied simply. "I wanted to find my dad." Celine turned to me then. No rage, no guilt, just cold disbelief. "You brought her here?" "No," I said. "She found me." And for the first time since this entire nightmare started, I saw something shatter behind her eyes. Not regret, not sorrow, just the realization that this time, the script wasn't hers to control. She couldn't twist this, couldn't rewrite it. The truth had caught up to her, and it had come home soaked in rain, carrying a duffel bag and a broken history. Celine didn't stay long. She didn't apologize. She didn't fight. She just left. And this time, when the door closed behind her, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like freedom. The weeks that followed were quiet, but healing in a way I hadn't expected. Eliza stayed. She wasn't ready to call me Dad, and I didn't push her. But she liked the way I made grilled cheese. And she asked me questions about things I thought no one ever noticed, like the photographs I'd taken in college, or the drawings I never hung up. One evening, I found her sketching in the guest room. I didn't interrupt. I just stood there for a moment and watched her, a pencil in her hand, one leg tucked beneath her, eyes narrowed in concentration. And I thought, she's going to be okay. We both are. I still get days where I feel hollow, days when I find a shirt Celine left in the closet, or hear a song that reminds me of a trip we took when we still believed in each other. But those moments pass. They always do. And in their place, something better is growing. Not flashy, not fast, just honest. Some nights, Eliza and I sit on the porch and say nothing at all. And it's in that silence I've started to feel whole again. Not because everything turned out the way I planned, but because sometimes the unexpected becomes the very thing that saves you. She came to my door in the middle of the rain,